Amy Sherman-Palladino now has her 4th career Directors Guild Award nomination for The Marvelous Simpsons and Maisel. She's also won multiple Emmy Awards for the show for producing, directing, writing, music supervision, and her nomination at the Directors Guild Awards this year is for the season 4 finale. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? I will not ask you how you get there because we know you would just take the subway. It's very easy. But I wanted to ask you.
Very simple to get there.
Very reasonable. But I want to ask you, you're nominated for the season finale. I felt this episode, there's so much stuff that happens. It is a major episode. So many things that are tying off from the season and the series thus far. So what was your biggest challenge, I guess, as a director on this episode?
Well, the whole season was challenging because, again, it was COVID and you were just trying to keep people from dropping dead in the streets, and you were trying to get a show made. That our show is a big show. It's an outside show. New York is so much a part of who we are that my biggest fear was that it was going to feel like a very interior show. It was going to feel a little claustrophobic. And yet one of my favorite scenes of my career was watching Rachel and Luke Kirby go toe to toe at Carnegie Hall. And it was a tour de force of acting that is what happens when you put those two weirdos. They're so weirdly talented that I don't even think I should say like, you're so wonderfully. I think it's unusual and not natural for you to be that good. And I think it's not good for the rest of the world. Our expectations will be too high. It's just painful to watch, but they are so in sync, and and the dance that they did was so nuanced, and Luke had to hit so many points and so many ups and so many downs, and we had so built to this moment over the 4 years of their coming in and out of their lives and being supporters of each other and being muses in a sense, that for this clash to happen, the last person in the world that Midge would ever think would take her to task is taking her to task, and he's right. And it was a very fulfilling moment because it's something that we knew was going to happen from the first weeks of sitting in the writer's room breaking out stories. We knew we're going to end in Carnegie Hall. We knew we're going to recreate Lenny's thing there, and we knew that something was going to happen between Midge and Lenny. And so to feel to see what happened with it, and to sort of I've got one of the McConkie brothers. They're both geniuses and weirdos, and they go off in the woods with duct tape and pipes, and they come back with equipment that can do things that nothing exists before. And I let him, he watched the show enough, he got enough in the groove that it's sort of like now, after we sort of knew where our moments were, we just got into a dance, and it was a perfect dance. It was Ginger and Fred off to Rio. And I will say I'm extremely proud of the show for that reason. I mean, there's so many wonderful things. Tony Shalhoub was so amazing in his, everyone showed up. Michael Egan always shows up. Michael Egan shows up when we're not even shooting. He just shows up, and he's perfect because that's the kind of actor he is. So, but it was leading to, we had taken Midge on this sort of like, my life is here, and my life might be here, and maybe I'll get married again, and maybe I'll go on tour. And it was time for like that bucket of ice water to hit her on the head and go, it's now or never, baby. There are moments in people's lives, and especially in show business, where you do not grab them, they are gone. They are not coming back. That one moment that you thought, I'll get another shot at it, you are not getting another shot at it. It's now or never. And I'm just very pleased that it turned out exactly the way I was hoping in my heart.
that scene is amazing. It's a great, and there's obviously like a lot of great Midge and Lenny stuff in this episode as well. But like that scene is so great. When you're shooting that, did you like? I guess, do you know you got it? Like you're saying, like there, like right there, like when you're on the set, are you like, oh yeah, then this is actually working exactly as I had hoped, or like, do you know that, or do you not know that until you go back and look at the dailies, or however you kind of doing it? Like how do you kind of view it like that?
I knew. I mean, I'm not a daily person. I actually haven't watched dailies since the first season of Gilmore Girls, and I only watched them because everybody else would sit around at lunch and watch it. And in my mind, I was so confused as why we were watching dailies, because we had no money. So even if they sucked, we weren't going to do anything about it. It wasn't like Warner Brothers was going to let us go in and shoot something. So I'm like, why are we torturing ourselves? You know, because so I think I really like trained myself. And again, I think being a writer helps all of this, because you've worked out so much of the emotional ups and downs and whose face you want to be on and whose moment it really is. And you've done that, and you've been wrestling with that in your brain for so long that by the time you get on stage, it's already in your mind what you want it to be. And then it's like, now how do you get it there? And that is the trickiest part. The trickiest part is taking what is in here, what is on here, and then making sure that it happens, because cameramen are humans and they breathe and they feel different things and they reach for different things, and DPs will set a mood and an emotion, and a room will feel differently than you had anticipated it feeling, because it's got a certain glow to it, or there's a corner suddenly that feels like, why aren't they in the corner? They should be in the corner, you know. And then you have actors who come in, and you have to let them have their process. You can't just say, go there, stand there, do this. You know, we're sticklers for dialogue here. We're sticklers for our lines are word for word. But our actors are also used to that. And because we rehearse things a lot before we start shooting, much to the dismay of your second AD, who has to write down on some report what time you got your first shot off, the multiple rehearsals gets everybody in that groove. And it makes sure that the actors understand, if you're asking them to go over there, why? Mm-hmm. Why are they going over there? Why are they making a move? You know, sometimes you have to be honest and you go, well, I got to get on your face. So you got to take one step to the right, you know, but as organic as you can have it and everybody be in sync, what I have found is more rehearsal, less shooting. The less rehearsal you do, the more shooting you do. And because of that, I think that I'm very in tune to when I have it and when I don't have it. I'm not a big believer in, I've got it, let's just keep going just to see what else happens. Right. If I know I have it, let's go, because there's energy, there's emotions, and it's going to hit a peak, and then it's going to go down, because you are dealing with creatures who are working from hearts and souls and minds. So I've taught myself a lot, also because we're a very expensive show. So the way we can make claw money back is hours. The only way you have less hours on a show is if you rehearse the shit out of something. Everybody knows exactly what they're doing. The actors know exactly what they're playing. The camera guys are really, really in the groove. And then you just let these great people go, and you sit back with a Diet Coke, and that is how for me, that's the system that works the best for me. Like, work your shit out. Now everyone's happy. Now let's just go. And when you've got it, move on.
Right. We have to wrap up quickly, but based off of that, do you feel like you are a 4-time DGA nominee for the show? And like, I think this episode specifically is really, I mean, I'm not asking you to pick a favorite, but I think it's a really great episode of Mrs. Maisel. Do you think have you like gotten better as a director of Mrs. Maisel, I guess, since when you first started the show to like this episode? I know you're obviously doing the final season as well here, but like I was
born perfect. No, okay. Look, There is the work. The work is the point. It's the point. It's hard work. It's long work. Again, I have an issue with the 7:00 calls. I don't understand it. You should use nothing I shoot before noon, because it's a person who just doesn't had enough coffee yet. But I try to make sure that everything I do, I'm trying to push it a little more. And sometimes pushing it a little more weirdly also means to know when to not be fancy. It's not all about being fancy. We do a lot of wonders on the show. I like movement. I find I move a lot. I find people, when I'm talking to them, we very rarely stand on a mark and have a conversation that is static and that is not even a little overlapping or it's just the way I see the world. But also sometimes it's two people talking at a table. And if it's two people talking at a table, shoot two people talking at a table. If what they are saying and if what they are going through is worth the journey, you don't need a shot of the clock or the dog or a chipmunk going by or the pie droops or like suddenly, something drips onto the table. Like that can be great when you're setting some sort of mood. But I think I've actually gotten better at let it live. Just let it live. The actors have this. I can sit back. I don't have to find my fanciness. My fanciness is there. I do my fancy. I believe me. I look for my fancy. The strip number that we went in and out. I had them construct this set from that I drove everyone nuts with this set because there were cranes and things and people and I'm like, they didn't want to do Steadicam. I'm like, it's got to do Steadicam. Look, I make people nuts. I'm here for that. But I also think if you have material you believe in, you have a story that you believe in, if you can remember why you fell in love with this in the moment, and then you handed the gifts of a Rachel Brosnahan, of a Luke Kirby, of an Alex Borstein, of a Maren Hinkle, of a Tony Shalhoub, a Michael Zegan, a Caroline Aaron, a Kevin Pollak. You are handed these people. You're an asshole not to let them take your heart and then make it something that is so much bigger and better than you could have imagined, just so that you can say it was done my way. I think that's a lesson that I think I have learned.
Right.
I've also learned I'm not a shot list gal. Sorry. Like I like to be there, work with them, work everything out, and then say, once I've seen my master, because I shoot all my masters from beginning to end, I try to make my whole master work, and then I'll be able to say, I need to go into her face for this line, that line, so that I'm a very targeted director. Once I know where I need that moment or that pop, or maybe that's a little too slow, then I can go for it there. I don't walk into it with that sort of plan. I think that the minute the actors take it, it's going to change anyhow, depending on how they see it. And then you have to figure out how to all get in the same groove.
Right. Incredible stuff. Amy Sherman-Palladino, Directors Guild Award nominee for Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome, sir.